There's a quiet moment most people don't talk about. It isn't dramatic. It doesn't happen at a mountaintop or after a big win. It happens in the small hour of the night when the world finally stops buzzing. When the street outside your window hums like a tired machine and you're alone with the things you keep putting off. The things you claim you'll get to when life slows down. For me, that moment has always arrived with a notebook. It isn't new or pretty. The cover's a little bent on one corner from being shoved into bags too many times. The pages smell faintly like old paper and winter air. And every time I touch it, I feel something stir inside me. Something I've ignored for too long. Tonight, it sits at the edge of my desk, half open, almost like it's waiting for me. I run my hand along the spine, and a layer of dust brushes against my fingertips. I don't even know why it surprises me anymore. I've been meaning to finish this notebook for, I don't know, months, years, maybe longer than I want to admit. Some pages are filled with big, rushed handwriting, the kind I use when I'm excited or scared. Dreams scribbled between grocery lists. Half-thought plans written down between long weeks and small victories. Other pages are blank. So blank it feels like they're calling me out, asking me quietly, when will you write the life you keep imagining? I sit down, the chair creaking like it's tired too. My tea's gone lukewarm, and the faint smell of jasmine floats up when I lift the cup. I take a small sip anyway, hoping it'll settle the tiny ache in my chest. This ache isn't sadness, not exactly. It's something like hunger. Maslow once wrote something that sounds simple, but hits like truth when life feels tight. What a person can be, they must be. Not should be, not ought to be, must. Because somewhere inside us, there's a version we're meant to grow into, and ignoring that version hurts in a quiet, familiar way. I think about that line as I flip the notebook open. The paper whispers a soft "ft" as it spreads out. There's a line I wrote months ago on the top of a page. Dreams I'm scared to say out loud. I remember writing it. My hands were cold because the window was cracked open. I'd been listening to the city outside, the sirens, the laughter, the buses, and wondering if everyone else felt this tug too. This strange pull towards something more than the everyday routine. Something bigger than paying bills, answering emails, trying to stay afloat in a world that moves faster than any of us can breathe. Back then, I wrote only 3 words under the title, "Not ready yet." I trace them with my finger now, and they feel heavier than ink. How many times have I said that to myself? Not ready, not today, not me, not yet. I think about a conversation I had with a friend a few weeks ago. We were sitting in her car, waiting for drive-through coffees, and she said, almost casually, "It's weird. I'm doing okay, but I'm not becoming me." She laughed right after, like she didn't mean it. But I saw the tired in her eyes. The same tired I see in mine when I pass a mirror too quickly. That sentence stayed with me. It stuck to the inside of my chest like a gentle warning, because I knew exactly what she meant. There's a specific loneliness that comes from outgrowing your own life but still living it anyway. I look down at the notebook again, at the blank pages, at the space I keep avoiding. Outside, a car door slams. Someone laughs. Someone else shouts something I can't make out. Life keeps moving. My tea keeps cooling. The night keeps pulling me inward. I breathe in slowly, the air smelling faintly of old books and the candle I forgot to blow out earlier. I whisper to myself, not even meaning to, "Is this all? Is there more of me I haven't met yet?" And for a second, the room feels warmer, like the question itself is a small light. Maybe this is where every climb begins. Not with confidence, but with a quiet honesty. With a worn notebook on a tired desk. With a person who's finally brave enough to admit they want something different, something deeper, something that feels like their own life, not a life rented from expectations. I sit with that thought. I let the silence stretch. I let the moment settle into me, the way warm tea settles into my hands on cold mornings. The notebook waits, and so do I. The next morning, the notebook is still on my desk, half open like a wound. I don't touch it. I just look at it while I pull on yesterday's jeans, still creased from the chair. The sun is coming through the blinds in thin lines, marking the carpet like little prison bars. Funny how light can feel heavy when you're not ready for the day. I grab my keys, my phone, that half-empty notebook, mostly out of habit, and head out. The air outside is cool, the kind that wakes your skin before it wakes your mind. There's a neighbor walking his dog, wearing the same tired baseball cap he wore yesterday. He nods. I nod back. Everyone's tired in the morning. Some of us are tired in deeper places. At work, the fluorescent lights hit me first, then the noise. Keyboards clacking, phones ringing, people talking like they're trying to sound more awake than they are. I set the notebook beside my computer, even though I know I won't open it here. Not with deadlines breathing down my neck. Not with the weight of expectation sitting on my chest like a second heart. Around noon, I catch myself scrolling my phone, not because I want to, but because the silence inside me feels too loud. TikTok, Instagram, email, the news, it's all the same loop. Someone's buying a house at 28. Someone's running a marathon. Someone's already worked out, meal prepped, journaled, prayed, meditated, and read 3 chapters of a leadership book before sunrise. I look at my own reflection on the screen. Tired eyes, messy hair, the faint bruise of sleeplessness under each eye, and I tell myself it doesn't matter. But it does. It always does. Maslow warned about this, how we run from our potential because we're afraid of the responsibility it demands. It's called the Jonah complex, and when I read about it last year, it felt like someone had quietly called my name. I close my phone and rub my temples. The notebook sits beside me, quiet, too quiet. At lunch, I overhear conversations that all sound like different versions of my own struggle. A teacher at the next table says she's exhausted from covering 2 classes because the school can't hire fast enough. I love my kids, but I'm losing myself, she murmurs, peeling the label off her water bottle. A dad waiting in line tells someone over the phone, I'm doing 2 jobs and still behind. I don't even know what my dream is anymore. A young immigrant line cook sits near the window, counting cash in his wallet, whispering in Spanish, algún día, one day, like a man praying. A remote tech worker, sitting alone with her earbuds in, stares at her laptop. I hear her whisper, I haven't talked to a real person in 3 days. Different lives, same ache. We're all climbing something invisible. We're all pretending it's not steep. Later, while scrolling through my phone again, searching for something I don't have a name for, I stumble on a line from a viral video. A girl looks into the camera with tired eyes and says, I'm not tired from working. I'm tired from carrying the life I'm scared to admit I want. Thousands of comments. Thousands of people quietly saying, me too. I feel that line in my ribs. Back at my desk, I flip open the notebook. Not to write, just to look. There's a page where the ink has smudged, probably from a spilled coffee or maybe a teardrop I pretended was nothing. The smudge looks like a small shadow, a reminder of the days when I felt too much but said too little. The hidden costs of staying the same start to show themselves. If I don't change, I'll keep shrinking around people who've never seen me fully. If I don't change, I'll keep taking jobs that drain me. If I don't change, I'll lose whatever young fire still flickers in me. If I don't change, I'll spend years building a life that feels nothing like my own. The truth hits harder than I expect. It's easier to stay small, but staying small has a price too. The room feels tighter. My throat feels warm. I place my hand on the notebook like it's something alive, something waiting, something that knows more about me than I've ever let myself say. And then the climax, the whisper that rises from somewhere deep and old inside me. If I don't change now, I'll lose myself. I don't say it loudly. I don't have to. The truth doesn't need volume. It needs honesty. The pages look heavier than paper, heavier than fear, heavier than the life I've been living on autopilot. I sit back, exhale, and for the first time, I admit it. I'm scared of becoming myself, but I'm more scared of never trying. The turning point didn't arrive with fireworks. There was no sudden clarity, no sunrise that made everything make sense. It came slowly, the way warm water fills a bathtub, unnoticed at first. Then all at once you realize you're surrounded. It started on a Wednesday evening, after another long day filled with tasks I did well but didn't love. I came home carrying takeout, my laptop, and that same old weight in my chest. When I dropped everything onto the kitchen table, the notebook slipped out of my bag and fell open on the floor. It landed on a page I hadn't touched since early spring, a page titled, "What I Want But Never Say Out Loud." The handwriting was shaky, the ink slightly faded. The line wasn't long or poetic, just one sentence I had written and abandoned months ago. I want a life that feels like mine. I sat down on the floor beside it. The tile was cold, and there were crumbs from breakfast I never swept up. I don't know why, but that made the moment feel real, honest, human in a way I hadn't allowed myself to be lately. I touched the sentence with my fingertips. Something inside me exhaled. Rilke once wrote something that feels like a soft hand on your back when you're scared. Live the questions now, and someday you'll live into the answers. I repeated that line to myself, not as a quote from a famous poet, but like advice from a friend who's seen the world and knows you're trying. I didn't have answers, but maybe answers weren't the point. Maybe showing up for the questions, the honest, unfinished ones, was enough. I picked up the notebook and sat at the table. The hum of the refrigerator filled the room. The streetlights cast a soft orange line across the counter. A neighbor's TV murmured through the wall. The world didn't know I was having a moment, and maybe that made it more mine. I grabbed my pen. I didn't plan to write anything big. After all, big plans are what scared me into doing nothing for so long. So I wrote something small. Tonight, I choose one thing I can control. My chest loosened. Not healed, not fixed, just loosened. The notebook's worn pages didn't demand perfection. They just held space. They reminded me I didn't need to climb my whole Everest tonight. Just take one foothold, one breath, one sentence. So I wrote another line. I want to be proud of how I spend my days. And another. I want to stop apologizing for wanting more. And then, without meaning to, I want to meet the person I could become. I don't know how long I kept writing. The fried rice grew cold. My tea went untouched. My phone buzzed with notifications I ignored. The city outside kept living, cars honking, kids laughing, someone shouting down the block. But inside my apartment, something quiet and sacred unfolded. It wasn't achievement. It wasn't transformation. It was permission. A small, steady permission to grow. I closed the notebook gently, like it was something delicate, like a soft truth I didn't want to crush. I leaned back in my chair and felt a strange warmth spread through my ribs. Not comfort exactly, more like relief. Relief that I had finally stopped running from myself. The next morning, I didn't wake up a new person. The alarm still annoyed me. The coffee still tasted a little burnt. The bus still came 5 minutes late, but something subtle had shifted. On the ride to work, instead of scrolling through other people's victories, I pulled out the notebook and reread the lines from last night. The bus windows were foggy, and I wiped them with my sleeve, watching the city blur by. For once, I didn't feel behind. I just felt present. I remembered something my grandmother used to tell me when I was a kid and frustrated with schoolwork. Baby, you don't have to finish today. You just have to begin. I didn't realize until now how much wisdom she carried in those small sentences. When I arrived at the office, a coworker asked if I was okay. I said, "Yeah, I think I am." It felt good to tell the truth and not hide the tremble in my voice. Later, during lunch, instead of rushing through emails, I opened the notebook again. This time, I wrote one more line, "Begin again." And that felt like a turning point, not a finish line, not a grand revelation, just a small, honest decision to keep choosing myself in quiet ways. The mountain wasn't smaller, but now I wasn't standing at the base frozen in fear. I had taken a step, a real one. And sometimes the first step is where the whole story finally begins. Here's what I remember from the days after that turning point. Not as lessons written in a book, but as small truths I carried in my pockets. The kind you whisper to yourself when no one's listening. Life didn't suddenly get easier, but something in me softened. And that softness made room for a kind of strength I'd been missing for years. I started paying attention to mornings again. The way the early light filtered through the blinds, the faint hiss of the kettle, the quiet rhythm of my breath when I wasn't rushing. I'd forgotten how grounding those ordinary moments could be, how they remind you that you're still here, still trying, still becoming. One morning, about a week later, I sat at the kitchen table, the same wobbly table where my notebook had fallen open and called me out. I stared at the steam rising from my mug, curling like a soft question in the air. And I thought, this is how change starts. Not loud, not proud, just steady. I opened the notebook again. The pages looked less intimidating now, like they'd been waiting for me to catch up. I flipped to a blank page and didn't force anything. I just wrote what came naturally. Here's what I know today. Not forever, not for the next 6 months, just today. I think that's what self-actualization really feels like. Not chasing a peak, but gathering small truths and carrying them forward like pebbles in your pocket. Not heavy, just reminders of where you've walked. Maslow talked about growth so simply. We can go back toward safety or forward toward growth. And here's something I didn't understand before. Growth doesn't mean a bigger job or a fancier life or a perfect vision board. Sometimes growth is drinking water before your third cup of coffee. Sometimes it's saying, I need help. Sometimes it's telling yourself, I deserve to be proud of how I spend my days. Sometimes it's touching the cover of a worn notebook and deciding to write one honest sentence instead of running from the whole story. I started noticing other people's quiet courage too. A coworker stayed after a meeting and told me she'd finally signed up for the night class she'd been afraid to take. A friend admitted she'd been thinking about changing careers but didn't know how to begin. My younger cousin started therapy after months of whispering, maybe later. We're all afraid of the same things: failing, succeeding, changing, staying the same. But we don't always say it out loud. Maybe that's why we feel so alone, even when our struggles overlap like fingerprints. One evening after work, I sat on a bench outside my apartment. The air smelled like pine and the distant smoke of someone grilling chicken 3 buildings over. A little girl rode past on a pink scooter, wobbling, laughing, falling, and then getting right back up. Her father clapped for her every time, cheering like she was winning a championship. And I thought, when did we stop being clapped for? When did we start treating every wobble like failure instead of proof that we're learning? I looked down at my notebook in my lap, its cover bent, the spine soft, the pages uneven, not perfect, not polished, but real. Maybe the notebook wasn't a symbol of what I hadn't done. Maybe it was proof that I was still willing to try. That night, I wrote one last note for myself. I want to build a life I don't have to escape from. Simple, true, enough. And then I wrote another. I'm not done, because I'm not, and neither are you. Healing isn't loud. Becoming isn't glamorous. Self-actualization isn't a finish line. It's an everyday kindness you show yourself, even on days you feel small, even on days you forget your own courage. You won't climb your Everest in a week, but you can take one step tonight. So here's a small invitation, a soft one, the kind that doesn't scare your heart. Try this tonight. Open your phone's notes app or grab the nearest scrap of paper. Write one sentence about your life, something you want, something you fear, something you hope for, something you're tired of carrying alone. Just one sentence, not a goal, not a plan, just a truth. Then close your eyes for 3 seconds. Breathe in. Let it settle in your chest like warm light. You've already begun. The notebook, my notebook, sits quietly on my shelf now. Not hidden, not haunting, just there, like a witness, a companion, a reminder that the story of becoming isn't written all at once. It's written line by line, breath by breath, day by day. And somewhere inside you, the person you're becoming is already proud you started.